Matthew Berry, served by Applebee's.
Hear ye, there's a new sheriff in town. Welcome on in to Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry, who of course is... Where is Matthew Berry? We're not quite sure. No, he is going to be joining the show in hopefully momentarily or at some point. But I'm Julie Stewart-Binks. I'm going to be steering the ship at least for the next little while alongside the betting man himself, the guru, Jay Croucher. And we have so much great stuff to get to. Of course, it is Waiver Wire Wednesday. Lots of action going on. And we will be heading into the Roto-World headlines. So let's get to those, and we begin with Kenneth Walker. And he is going to be playing in Week 2. We know that this will be his NFL debut. He was an absolute beast at Michigan State. But what does this mean for Rashaad Penny?
Not great, because Rashaad Penny, the game against the Broncos, that should have gone as well as any game could have gone for Rashaad Penny in terms of game script. Geno Smith cooking early, puts the chef hat on, and you think that the rest of the game, once they have the lead, is going to be the Rashaad Penny show. And look what he did. 12 rushing attempts for 60 yards, 2 receptions, 7 receiving yards, no touchdowns, and a fumble. I mean, this was the game where he should have had 25 rushing attempts, where he should have put up the numbers that he was at the end of last season. And now you have Kenneth Walker coming in, and the Seahawks love Kenneth Walker.
They love him.
They took him early. Pete Carroll was talking about how he could be out there this week and potentially, when he's fully healthy, he'll be playing all 3 downs. So I think you have to worry a little bit about Rashaad Penny, who at some point is going to get injured, because that's what Rashaad Penny does for fun.
There's just a timeline of like, at what point does this happen in the season? But you have to think about with Kenny Walker. I mean, is this guy, we know that he hasn't played yet, but is he still in the contention of being Rookie of the Year?
Definitely, just because everyone's in contention, that market is a complete mess. Jahan Dotson right now is the favorite for Offensive Rookie of the Year. Jahan Dotson might be the 3rd wide receiver for Carson Wentz, depending on how you feel about Curtis Samuel. So he's definitely not the number 1 guy. So I think that the market is wide open. I think that guys like Kenneth Walker, who's 25-1 right now for Offensive Rookie of the Year, Breece Hall, both of those guys are 1 injury away from literally being the favorite for the award. So it's completely wide open. I would still be looking at the quarterbacks in that market, just because quarterbacks win every award that they're eligible for, really. And so looking at guys like Kenny Pickett, Desmond Ridder, who I expect will start at some point, they're starting to drift in the market a little bit.
But you have to think with Kenny Walker for this week, if he's coming off of an injury, he's not going to be getting that much volume when you're looking at Rashaad Penny. Like, you shouldn't be that worried if you have Rashaad Penny.
I agree. I do think I would be a little bit concerned that the Seahawks are 9.5-point underdogs to San Francisco, which no respect for the Seahawks, first of all.
Yeah,
I don't know if you
can't
saw
get
San
no
Francisco.
respect.
San Francisco didn't look very good in Chicago. Trey Lance did not look like a guy.
Though.
The weather was a factor there, but I would be a little bit concerned that I'm not sure they're going to have as many opportunities to run the ball. And even when they did against the Broncos, they were still passing. They were still letting Geno be the guy there and not Rashaad Penny, which is a bit surprising.
Right. Well, we will be excited to see what goes down with that game. And we'll be talking about Trey Lance later on in the program. Another guy that we have our eyes on, and he is unlikely to play in Week 2, is Keenan Allen for the Chargers. But what does this mean for the other guys on the roster, especially Josh Palmer? And if you have him in your lineup, is he a must start?
I think so, because he ran the 2nd most routes of all Chargers receivers against the Raiders. He's going to get opportunities. He's going to be on the field, and he balled out last year when Keenan Allen was out and also when Mike Williams was out. So he's shown that he can produce when given the opportunity. And this is what without Keenan last year. So Josh Palmer, in the game that Keenan Allen missed, 62 of 66 snaps, lines up in the slot and out wide and in line. Ran 33 routes on 35 Justin Herbert dropbacks, and he had a team-high 7 targets for a 22% share, 5 receptions, 66 yards, 1 touchdown. So I think the thing that I'm really interested in this game is, are they just going to give Justin Herbert the keys? Why are they running the ball 31 times? You've got Justin Herbert. He's really good.
know.
And we'd like to see him air it out a bit.
Sources say he's pretty good out there.
I think so.
And even sources say that I spoke to today were telling me that, Chargers camp is very, very hot on Josh Palmer, and they want him, or they've noticed that he's been developing a lot of chemistry with Herbert. But you also have to think about how many other guys there are that are potential targets for Herbert. I mean, we will talk about him in a second, but a guy like Mike Williams, we want to see a bounce back situation. Austin Eckler, DeAndre Carter. There's Gerald Everett.
There's a lot of names.
There's a lot of names.
I think Mike Williams, he's the guy on the Chargers, and I wouldn't be worried about the fact that he had so little production against the Raiders. Last year in his first game against the Raiders, he had 1 catch for 11 yards, and he was fine the rest of the season. Look, in this game, the Chargers, they're 4.5-point underdogs. So we're expecting that they might be behind, they might be throwing the ball. They're not going to run the ball 31 times against the Chiefs, you would expect. And Mike Williams should be the big beneficiary for that.
Right, because if he had a down week in week 1 and he's a roller coaster, unless he's like the Tower of Terror and there's that extra drop coming.
Gravity dictates.
Yeah, he's probably going to go up. That's what we think in terms of this analogy. And we know that this game is happening on Thursday. Chargers taking on the Chiefs. You mentioned the line there that the Chiefs are 4.5-point favorites. Why?
Yeah, this is surprising to most because it opened at 3.5. It's already pushed up to 4.5. A lot of sharp people are betting on the Chiefs. Now, a lot of that is because Keenan Allen is probably going to miss, and then also J.C. Jackson, who is their best cornerback on the Chargers, is maybe going to play, maybe not. He might be limited if he does play. The total in this game is 54.5, so expecting a lot of scoring, a lot of yards, a lot of fantasy points going around. But yeah, I think this is a reflection of just how incredible Patrick Mahomes looked against Arizona, despite not having Tyreek Hill. Doesn't matter, he's fine. Juju Smith-Schuster, Mecole Hardman, whoever is out there are going to produce. Travis Kelce was a monster, and Mahomes, I think Mahomes should be the MVP favorite.
All right, that is an overhype of week 1, though, but I love it.
Yeah, Arizona, not much, and the Chargers are going to give them more resistance, but Patrick Mahomes, I think these are the 2 best quarterbacks in the NFL on Thursday night.
Oh, wow, well
Sorry, Josh Allen.
Yeah, I was going to say, another can't get no respect, Josh Allen. He's someone I've got my eye on because I absolutely thought he did incredible last week in week 1, as so many quarterbacks did, though. It was kind of actually a mixed bag of quarterbacks. But when you do look at this, could you say that you're overvaluing someone like Mahomes after a week 1? I mean, he had 5 touchdowns, but
he's going to get more resistance against the Chargers defense, which is all of a sudden loaded with or without J.C. Jackson. Like Khalil Mack was a monster with 3 sacks opposite Joey Bosa. I think Derwin James might win Defensive Player of the Year this year. He's the ultimate Swiss Army knife. And he's such a luxury where you can use him as a pass rusher, you can use him as a safety, as a cornerback. He can do everything, so it's not going to be as easy for Mahomes. Right. And that Arizona secondary might be the worst in the league. That team is a disaster right now, and that line has moved significantly against them this week. So I don't think Mahomes is going to have the stats he did against Arizona, but at the same time, the whole point of Patrick Mahomes is that he's kind of like defense agnostic. It doesn't matter what the defense is because Patrick Mahomes is too good.
I love that term. Okay, so you did, though, mention over-under set at 54.5. Why do you think this is going to be such a potentially high-scoring game? And maybe that might have to do with one of the coaches involved.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of aggressiveness on 4th down with Brandon Staley, as famously he did last year against the Chiefs, going for it on 4th and 9. Look, the total is high because it's Justin Herbert and it's Patrick Mahomes. And when you think about totals, you should always think about them relative to 48 points. 48 is the average for a total, so 54.5, expecting almost a touchdown above average, which makes sense when you have those 2 quarterbacks. I would actually skew a little bit towards the under, just because I think that both of these defenses might be better than anticipated. And also, if Brandon Staley is going to keep Justin Herbert locked in the shed and just run the ball constantly, that's going to bleed clock as well.
Okay, all right. Well, let's move on to the Patriots. They've placed Ty Montgomery on IR, and we're curious how this move helps either Damian Harris or Ramondre Stevenson more? Who do you think?
I would skew towards Ramondre Stevenson. I just think he has more scope, more upside to have a true 3-down role. I don't feel good about anyone on this team, though.
Yeah, it's a tough backfield.
I don't feel good about even beyond the backfield. I mean, you don't look like any of the receivers, the tight ends. Don't really like Mac Jones. I do think the Patriots, I think Arizona are a disaster. I don't think the Patriots are a disaster like they showed in week 1. I think that Mac Jones was just about the most unlucky quarterback in week 1 in terms of drop passes. He has a tipped pass in the end zone that gets intercepted. So I think that the Patriots are better than they showed. They're 1.5-point favorites in Pittsburgh, which I think surprises some people. I mean, do you think Pittsburgh should be favored in that game?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Especially not only based on how they did in week 1, but just, again, going up against the Patriots.
Black and yellow.
Yeah.
Go Steelers.
Yes, I've obviously just my Steelers nation coming out right here on the show. I'm Canadian. We have a little Commonwealth action going on here.
We cancelled Matthew's visa.
Yes.
Off the show.
Okay, well, let's look at the running back usage in week 1. And when we see this, we check things out with the Patriots. And yeah, I've been watching the show, I got to tell you. I know Matthew makes a joke that you guys are going to get canceled and all this stuff. I'm always like, no. I'm watching. And I was surprised because I really wanted Ramondre Stevenson in my draft. I ended up with Damian Harris.
Okay.
And I was not too upset about that.
No, and I think, look, Matthew and I both loved Ramondre Stevenson in the preseason just because we thought he had more upside, but week to week there's absolutely a chance that Damian Harris is the guy that you want based on what happened in week 1. He was the guy that you want in terms of his offensive snaps. It was just a weird game against Miami. The Patriots, they kept on getting stopped at like the Miami 40, so they're just outside where you'd want to be. So I think the Patriots will bounce back. I think this is going to be a kinder game script for them. And the thing about the Steelers is, yes, they got the win. They also needed 5 Joe Burrow turnovers and 2 chip shot missed field goals, including an extra point, just to win the game in overtime. The Steelers are not very good. Yeah,
and we're going to talk about the Bengals momentarily, but when you do have to keep that in mind, that the script could be completely flipped if Evan McPherson had made some of those field goals. If anyone had him on their fantasy roster, maybe a friend of mine or someone would have remembered that. Definitely. Money Mac.
Running short of change.
Yeah, well, there's some more news coming out of the 49ers here with Marlon Mack being signed to the practice squad. So we know he was released by the Texans in the preseason. It's busy there. Dameon Pierce, Rex Burkhead. But now the Niners have added some veteran experience to the room. When you see this move, how does it make you feel about the Niners rookie running backs?
My point here would be that if you're losing time to Marlon Mack, then you're probably not that good anyway, honestly. So here's the depth chart. Jeff Wilson, he's clearly the guy that you want. He's the number 1 pickup on waivers. He's going to replace the workload that Elijah Mitchell had. Elijah Mitchell, with the MCL, is out for 8 weeks on IR. And then Davis Price, Jordan Mason, Marlon Mack. I don't really want any part of Marlon Mack, but the younger guys, I think they're stash candidates. And then if something happens to Jeff Wilson, because we know how much Kyle Shanahan loves to run the ball. It's like his identity is running the ball and how creatively he does it. But Jeff Wilson is absolutely the guy. And I think that the Niners are going to be a lot better than what they showed at the slip and slide in Chicago. They are 9.5-point favorites against Seattle, so expect they would be running the ball.
What do you think of that line? Is that where you would expect it, or is that high?
It's a lot of respect for Trey Lance, who didn't show much. Even in the conditions, he did not look good. And the concern about the Niners, I think, even more than Trey Lance, is that offensive line just might be bad. They were getting trucked by Chicago defense, which isn't exactly the 85 Bears. And outside of Trent Williams, I think you do have to be a little bit concerned about that. You have to be concerned that George Kittle may not play in this game again. And 9.5, not much respect for the great Geno Smith after what he showed.
I thought we were all team Geno Smith after this.
Yeah,
ain't right back.
I think that Geno Smith showed that he has a higher ceiling than I think anyone thought. I mean, he started the game 13 for 13, 100 yards and a touchdown. And the way I would get involved in this game is the total, which is 42.5.
Okay.
So you only need like 16 points out of Seattle to go over that total in terms of what the line projects. So I think Geno Smith can score 16 points against the 49ers, who have a good defense, particularly in the run game. But I think that Geno is going to be able to put up points. And
he did benefit a lot from the Broncos, though, on the 1-yard line.
He did benefit a lot from the Broncos. Should have won that game by 2 touchdowns.
Yes.
So I don't think the Seahawks are very good. I don't think that defense is good at all, because the Broncos, they should have scored 30 points in that game. Somehow they only get 16, and that's good news for Jeff Wilson, for Trey Lance. If Trey Lance doesn't play well in this game, it's time to sound the alarm, because this isn't a good Seattle defense.
Oh man, okay. Well, that's tough. You're right, especially after what we saw and what we know. If this is the game where you say, if maybe you have another quarterback on that your bench, that maybe you would play. I don't know, JG, if you had Ryan Tannehill on your bench, if you were someone and you're playing Trey Lance. We've got to give Trey Lance somewhat of a leash.
I think
He's a young guy. He's coming. He has pressure not only on the field, but breathing down his neck in the locker room.
Not an ideal spot for Trey Lance. I do think that there was a lot of thought that Trey Lance, he would just come in and he would be like Lamar Jackson's MVP season, Patrick Mahomes' MVP season. Guys that started the season, those seasons with similar odds to Trey Lance this year. After week 1, not sure he has that upside in him straight away. I think there's going to be growing pains. But I do think that the Niners ultimately will be okay. I do think they just have so much talent. Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk.
I was going to say, there's one guy you hadn't mentioned yet, Deebo Samuel.
Yeah, and I mean, he might be their primary running back and their primary wide receiver, as the joke goes. But I do think that they will ultimately be fine. But it would be changing that assessment if they don't beat Seattle pretty handily this weekend.
And seeing how their injuries do, how George Kittle does, and if Deebo Samuel can also have a bit of a bounce-back game. Great job on everything there, my friend. We have more to come here on Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry. Stay tuned. We have rankings next.
How surprised were you that you couldn't get CeeDee going the way you wanted to?
Yeah, I mean, should be able to, and that's on me a little bit. That's on just on us getting on the same page, and I mean, he's a hell of a player, and he's a guy that needs the ball. As I said, we've got to get it to him more, and it starts with him.
That was Dak Prescott on getting CeeDee Lamb more involved now that he is injured. Jay Croucher, Julie Stewart-Binks, Matthew Berry is somewhere in the universe. Not here with us right now, but that doesn't matter because we are going to keep on rolling as you do at Happy Hour. We are having a great time here. And we're checking out the rankings from this past week 1 heading into week 2. An exciting day, too, because the waiver wire is open for business. And when we look at CeeDee Lamb, such an interesting situation for him, because if you have him on your roster, you've obviously drafted him pretty high.
Yes.
But now he is without his starting quarterback for at least, according to Dr. Jones, maybe 4 weeks or so, because he's not on the IR. How do you feel about where he is ranked without Dak? And we have him ranked, Matthew Berry's ranking is wide receiver 18.
Yeah, I would be buying low on CeeDee Lamb. I think that he'll produce enough to justify a flex spot for now until Dak Prescott comes back. And the thing is that the next 3 weeks, the defenses that the Cowboys are going against, Bengals, Giants, Commanders, not really petrified by any of those defenses. I think that Cooper Rush will have to be throwing the ball because they're likely going to be trailing because they're not a very good team anymore without Dak Prescott. So I think Lamb will do enough. And then according to Dr. Jerry Jones, one of the great medical professionals in the Northern Hemisphere, might be back. Dak might be back for at the Rams in week 5, based on what Jerry says, and certainly maybe back before the bye. And at that point, you're getting the guy in CeeDee Lamb who was, wide receiver 6 in preseason. So I would not be giving up on CeeDee Lamb, particularly if Dak is going to be back in 4 or 5 weeks, as is now kind of the operating assumption.
Yeah, we'll be curious to see, as you mentioned, Cooper Rush is going to have to throw the ball at some point, but you would, at some point.
Good luck, Cooper.
One would imagine. But you also look to their running game and just the fact you have Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard. Where do you think he decides to sort of like spread the volume out in terms of the rushing?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to look a lot like it did against Tampa Bay. I mean, Ezekiel Elliott, stats weren't amazing, but he showed more burst. And I think last year, the thing about Zeke was that he was banged up all season. So I think he has upside with his health. Much to Matthew's chagrin, Tony Pollard didn't really get involved in the passing game against Tampa Bay, but I do think there is more scope for him to be used as a receiver out of the backfield. So, look, this Dallas team is a disaster. Like, it's a catastrophe. Just no matter, you can slice and dice it. Ezekiel Elliott, Tony Pollard.
Panic.
It's going to be bad, but I think that CeeDee Lamb in particular is a guy who is worth sticking through, and don't just give him up and trade him for whatever because you don't want to deal with Cooper Rush. Like, Dak Prescott's not out for the season. He'll be back, and you'll have CeeDee Lamb in the second half of the season, as a guy who should be a top 10 wide receiver.
Yeah, you can't be trading or dropping CeeDee Lamb after week one. I know we love to just really shake things up after week one because we're freaking out that everything that we thought was going to happen didn't happen, or all these injuries have occurred. But we really got to stay the course with some of these guys like CeeDee Lamb. But when we look at the betting market, Jay, and with Dak Prescott being out, how does that really affect this team's outlook in the market?
It's bad outlook, real bad. They're, coming into the season, they were joint favorites with the Eagles for the NFC East. Now they're behind the Commanders and the Giants. They are fourth favorite for the NFC East. And if you just want to look at just week to week how this affects the Cowboys, I would have made Dallas-Cincinnati in Dallas with Dak Prescott. Even with all their other injuries, of which there are plenty, I would have made that game pick. That's dead even to me. Right now, the line is Cincinnati minus 8.5.
Wow.
So that is the market telling us that the difference between Dak Prescott and Cooper Rush is 8.5 points. That's a lot. That's basically the difference between Aaron Rodgers and Jordan Love, even a little bit more. So not a great outlook for the Cowboys. At the same time, you still get to watch Micah Parsons each week, who's the most exciting defensive player in football. But, he might not...
a little bit more than that, if we're watching America's team at this point. But
exactly.
That is a tough one. But some good news, at least, for after week one. We'll see how this happens in week two. But for Michael Thomas, feel-good story, having him back, being able to produce when he was out with injury, and especially in that second half for him against the Falcons. The chemistry between him and Jameis Winston, you could just see it really starting to evolve, and him finding the end zone for 2 touchdowns. How do you feel about him heading into week two? What's your view going forward, and are you worried as they face the Bucs?
Yeah, I had a Falcons plus 200 money line ticket, so I wasn't stoked.
I've been watching the show. I know.
Wasn't stoked with Michael Thomas's sterling performance.
You must have put a lot of money on that one.
Yeah, I keep going back to it, but they're up 16 points in the fourth quarter, Julie. So, look, Michael Thomas.
Haven't we learned from the Super Bowl?
I know, never again. Never trust Marcus Mariota or the Atlanta Falcons franchise. Look, he had a 26% target share in week one, Michael Thomas. He had 8 targets, tied for the most on the team. So, yeah, I don't think Michael Thomas is the guy from 2019 who set the receptions record and won Offensive Player of the Year over Lamar Jackson's MVP season, but I do think that's very encouraging because there was questions as to whether he was going to play.
Right.
And then he came out there, basically won them the game. And the fact that he was able to show that in the second half, that shows a lot of upside. And also, I think the fact that Jarvis Landry looks so good, topping 100 yards, Cris Olave got involved.
Nice.
I think that stuff, that helps Michael Thomas, takes more attention off him. Tampa Bay defense is not a great matchup, but at the same time, Tampa's defense is great because you cannot run the ball on Tampa Bay. Teams just give up with the run, like Frank Reich did against them last year, where they're throwing it every single time. So I do think New Orleans will be throwing the ball against Tampa, and Michael Thomas should be able to ramp up even further.
Where would you rank Tampa's defense? We know that they won the Super Bowl just a couple of years ago, but they were against a Dallas team this past week that only put up 3 points. Like how good is Dallas versus how good Tampa's defense was?
So I think Tampa Bay have the best defense in the NFL. I rank them number 1 in terms of how I'm pricing out lines. They are the best. New Orleans, who they're playing this week, would have been in the mix for that, but they gave up 26 points to Marcus Mariota and the Falcons, which think it's being a little bit slept on just because New Orleans, they came back, they won the match, won the game and everything. But
I also love that you say match, by the way.
Team Commonwealth,
yes,
right?
Team Commonwealth.
Let's talk about Arsenal-Brentford after
I know.
this.
Oh, I love that. Arsenal's doing quite well. NBC property, we can say that for a second.
Exactly.
Football. Okay, so let's get back to this American football. And
American football. It's great.
But we think that the Saints, and the line for this one, against the Bucks, where's we going with it?
It was 2. Now it's 2.5. It's even trending up to 3. If it stays under 3, I would love the Bucks minus 2.5. They're just there. I think they're significantly better than the Saints. I think a lot of people are reading into the fact that New Orleans are 4-0 against the Bucks in the last 4 regular season matchups. I don't care about that. I think people are reading far too much into that. They're all isolated games. They don't necessarily blend into each other. One of those games was Tom Brady's first ever game as a Buck. I mean, Drew Brees was playing quarterback for some of those games. So these are different situations. I don't think that the Saints are as good defensively as we expected. I think it's Tampa Bay defense, like I said, best in the game. And I think also that Tampa, they have enough at receiver. Julio Jones looked pretty good.
I know. What is it? This guy last year was all over the map, as, I don't know, someone might have had him on their fantasy team or not. And then, of course, I'm watching him play on Sunday thinking, wow, okay,
he's pretty good on that
back from the dead. Yeah.
You've got Russell Gage there as well, and obviously Mike Evans, who is an elite wide receiver. So, yeah, I wouldn't be riding off the Bucs at all.
What about Chris Godwin, though? Got to be a little bit worried about that.
It's sad as well because the first play of the game goes to Godwin in the slot. He charges for a first down. Looks like the Chris Godwin of old, and then immediately the hamstring goes after that. So it's just a wait and see with Godwin. I'd be a little bit concerned there as to how quickly he's going to get back. But, once he is fit and firing, that offense is going to almost be the match of that defense, and they will be absolutely loaded. That's why they're the favorites to win the NFC. But in the meantime, it's going to be a lot of Russell Gage and Julio Jones.
I want to give you a chance to take a sip of water because you've just been stats on stats right now here at Happy Hour. I'm just asking you questions the whole time. It's like interview. I was going to say it's like a date, but it's not because it's a TV show, and we're not doing that right now. But what is going on is you said something about the fact that you can't look at the past 4 years or the 4 times that the New Orleans Saints took on the Bucs. And I found that fascinating because the last couple of years have been, precarious all over the place with the pandemic and different shortened seasons and all this kind of stuff. How much do you think that the markets and the lines, do they factor in the fact that these last 2 years have been a wild, wild west?
Definitely, particularly 2 years. The pandemic season was just a mess. You've got wide receivers playing quarterback for the Broncos. So I think that it is difficult. The biggest change, though, over the past couple of years is that home field advantage matters less than it ever did. Everyone used to think that home field was worth 3 points.
Right.
Now it's worth 1.5.
Yeah.
And a lot of that, I think, is just science is better, planes are better, travel is easier.
Planes are better?
Planes are way better, Julie.
Yeah.
They're way better,
yes.
particularly if you're Tom Brady and you're jetting around to New Orleans. But, yeah, that's the biggest change is that home field advantage just matters less than it used to.
Yes. Okay, well, let's move on to a team that did have some I don't know about home field advantage, but they thrived in the mud, which was the Chicago Bears. Darnell Mooney and Cole Kmet did not thrive in the mud, I will say. We have both of them combining for 4 targets, 1 reception, 8 yards. And when you look at them and you see them heading into week 2, we know that they are taking on the Green Bay Packers on NBC, Sunday Night Football. Do you have any concerns for Chicago's passing volume?
Yes, I don't think it's going to be good. I think they're a bad offense. I think the defense might be better than expected in Chicago, but the offense was terrible against San Francisco despite Justin Fields connecting on one 50-yard bomb. And I think you can throw most of it out because they were playing in absurd conditions. The total dropped to 37, it was the lowest total on the board. And I would say if you're looking for reasons for optimism for the Bears and players like Mooney and Kmet, I do think that the Packers defense might be worse than expected as well.
Okay.
Justin Jefferson did whatever he wanted, and I know he's Justin Jefferson, but he was wide open against that Packers defense. The safeties, Amos and Savage had awful games against Minnesota. So maybe the Packers defense isn't the elite unit that we thought that it might be. but at the same time, they should have more than enough to take down the Bears. The Packers are -10 at the moment. Would you be taking the Bears or the Packers at 10?
10.
It's a lot of points.
Yeah, you know what? I might take an alternative spread here. I could say even at 13 or something like that. I like to live dangerously. As I did I took the Broncos at -13.5. That did not work out very well, folks, as we all know. But when we look at Kmet, I got to ask you, zeros across the board for him. You got a guy giving you zeros. How do you feel about starting him again the next week?
I don't feel great, but at the same time, I do think you just have to roll him out, because if we look back at week one, every year week one throws up just ridiculous results. Like last year, Green Bay losing 38-3 to New Orleans, and then it just has no kind of place in the context of the season.
Right.
I do think that the Bears beating the Niners 19-10, we're going to look back at that and be like, how the hell did that happen?
Yeah.
And Cole Kmet is a part of that, where, the zero everything for Kmet. I don't think that's going to hold week to week because of the conditions. But yeah, I do think I'd be a little bit concerned in terms of the targets and everything, but let's see how he goes in normal conditions first.
Right, yes, exactly. And as we've been hearing time and time again, it was about the weather, and if you are the PR for the Niners, you got to keep going. It was the weather. It was the weather at this point, and nothing more than that. We look at Cleveland here, and a guy who was just always in the mix, Kareem Hunt. This guy is, absolutely incredible. He had 2 touchdowns. He had both receiving and rushing. Is he a reliable flex player, or was this perhaps a fluke?
I think it was a little bit fluky just because they ran the ball 39 times. They were leading the whole game against Carolina. So that would be one thing to factor in. At the same time, they are 5.5-point favorites against the Jets, and you would expect that they will be leading again and running the ball. It's not a situation where it's going to be like Seattle, where they were protecting the lead with letting Geno Smith air it out.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're not going to let Jacoby Brissett cook to protect a lead. So I do think that in matchups like this, Kareem Hunt is definitely playable. He has a lot of value, but his upside is obviously going to come if Nick Chubb goes down at some point.
Right. But even when Chubb is healthy and Chubb's playing, Kareem Hunt gets a lot of volume.
He does, and he gets the volume as a receiver as well. And you look at what they did in week one, Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. Obviously, Chubb gets the bulk of the rushing attempts and gets 141 yards as a result, but Kareem Hunt's still a very solid stat line. He is the third down back. He is going to get those receptions that obviously help you in PPR leagues particularly. So I think he's absolutely playable, Kareem Hunt. I would expect to see Nick Chubb get more touchdowns over the journey than Hunt, where Hunt beat him 2-0 in that stat against the Panthers. But look, the Jets are bad. The Jets are going to give up a lot of yards and a lot of fantasy points all season. One thing I will say about this game, I think a guy who's being a little bit slept on is Donovan Peoples-Jones, receiver on the Browns, who he ran the most routes of any Browns receiver, and he got the targets. And, he was the guy that you wanted over Amari Cooper. Jets' pass defense is really bad. I think that Donovan Peoples-Jones, who's not the biggest name in the world, but I think that he could be a sneaky pickup.
I mean, he is definitely the biggest name on the field. I have an affinity towards people with hyphenated last names, just because I also have to carry that hyphen and try to put it into hotel Wi-Fi, which it never does work quite so well. But when you look at him, and you said Amari Cooper as well didn't have that great of a day. We didn't expect him to. We don't expect Amari Cooper to slide on in there and be absolutely a star. But Jacoby Brissett, this was the first real game taste that we got of him as a Cleveland Brown. How would you rank him?
Yeah, I think Jacoby Brissett is fine. Like, he's not a bad quarterback. He's a professional enough quarterback to get the Browns to where they need to be in terms of, they're going to be extremely run heavy. They're running the ball 39 times. Obviously, they don't want to put it in Jacoby's hands. He's not a guy I'm ever excited about starting, unless it's like a super flex 2QB league where he can be the second guy. But look, Jacoby Brissett's fine, and I think that the line this week reflects that he is fine. He's better than Joe Flacco, and that's why the Browns are 5.5-point favorites, or at least a big part of it.
Even though, how many, what was Joe Flacco, how many times did he hand the ball off? Was it like 60 or something like that?
Yeah, Joe Flacco didn't cover himself in glory, and Yeah, I mean, our guy Connor Rodgers, he was tweeting about how with Joe Flacco, he's such a statue at this point, and he was always a statue, but now he's really ramped up the statue meter. 59 pass attempts from Joe Flacco,
wow.
And if there's one guy who wins on the defensive line, the play is over. And this is what Connor was tweeting about, is that he cannot make anyone miss. And good luck, Joe, against Myles Garrett this weekend.
That is a tough one. Okay, well, it's always tough for the Jets. I feel bad. But I have too much empathy, and that's not good in fantasy. Okay, so Cordarrelle Patterson, we know he had rushed for a career high 120 yards. We know that Damian Williams left the game. Tyler Algier was inactive. Can we expect to see this kind of volume? Is it sustainable for Patterson?
No, it's not. It's not sustainable. It was a little strange that Tyler Algier was a healthy scratch because he was a guy who was expected to have a role in that backfield. Look, I mean, Cordarrelle Patterson had 22 carries for 120 yards. I don't think he really even wants that volume. I think they want to protect him a little bit more.
Honestly, it's not mine.
And the other thing, too, is that the Falcons, they're not going to have that game script very often. They were leading the whole game, and they're not going to have that. They're 10.5-point dogs to the Rams. I'd expect that Patterson's going to be valuable, but I think that you're going to see that value shift more to the receiving side, which we didn't see as much against New Orleans, just because they're going to be losing a lot and they're not going to be able to run the ball. They're not going to be able to run him 22 times. So, I wouldn't be expecting that as the norm going forward. But look, he is an extremely talented player. He's one of the most diverse weapons. He doesn't get that much attention because he's on the Falcons,
right.
But he's certainly a guy who should have value.
And because with him and Damian Williams sharing the load for the most part, and then Damian Williams, when he went out, he didn't even have necessarily as much action in a way, right?
Yeah, exactly. And which is, I mean, you don't want to put the game in Marcus Mariota's hands, which they ultimately did, and it went very poorly. But yeah, there are going to be players who have fantasy value on the Falcons between Patterson, Marcus Mariota, who again, real life, not very good. Fantasy totally fine because he rushes the ball. And
who else on there do you like?
Well,
fantasy value.
Kyle Pitts had a bad game week 1,
right.
But he got 7 targets, and he will see more of a share going forward.
That was just a fluke. He's going to bounce back.
Yes, he'll be fine. And then Drake London as well, who looked really solid against the Saints. He's probably the rookie wide receiver I like most out of anyone, just because he's the number 1 guy.
Yeah, he will be someone to watch as we head into week 2. Also someone to watch is Matthew Berry, who is in the house, we are hearing, and is going to join us after the break here on Fantasy Football Happy Hour. Don't go anywhere. We got more to come.
Well, tonight was a humbling night. I think, anytime that you start to accumulate a little bit more experience, there's always going to be first for everything, whether it's losing it when you're leading at halftime, whatever it is. But my favorite part about sports, Gary, is the opportunity to respond. This is just chapter 1 of a guaranteed 17 chapters that we have. And looking forward to coming out swinging with these guys to the best of our ability.
Well, that was Sean McVay talking about a ton of get-right games for a number of teams that we thought were going to do well in Week 1. But before we get to that, we got to welcome in the man of the hour, fantasy football.
I'm not the man of the hour. I'm the man of the last 20 minutes. I've been in traffic for literally 3 hours. I apologize to you, Julie, JSB.
Okay.
You and I are dear friends. We've known each other for a long time. I was so excited to make our TV debut. I mean, I've been on Drinks with Binks, but
but now I'm on Happy Hour.
Now you're on Happy Hour. Yeah, for whatever reason, when you and I are on, whether it's in real life or TV life, you and I it's me, you, and alcohol.
Yes,
I don't know how that happens.
I don't know how that happens.
Yeah, exactly. I apologize to Jay as well. I apologize to the viewers and my NBC family. They shut down 10 miles of 95 to get here, and it's for a tragic reason. They're investigating a 3-person shooting, but unfortunately for people that don't know Connecticut, basically, like, if you can't get on 95, like, it's nothing but small towns, and so you're driving through these, like, small, quaint little one-lane roads that are like 20 miles an hour, like in New Canaan and Westport and Fairfield, and and I don't know the area because I know stupid Bristol, I've been here for 3 weeks, so I don't know. I'm trusting Waze, and Waze keeps trying to send me back to 95 South. I get to 95 South, and cops are like, nope, keep going. This one's closed too. This entrance is closed too, and so I'm here and I'm late and I'm annoyed and I apologize. So it's a get right show for me. Sean McVay saying get right week for the Rams. It's a get right show for me and for my fantasy team in our show league.
Yeah, well, you know what? We are happy to have you. We're happy to have you in one piece. And I mean, Jay is. We've been tap dancing here.
Okay.
Credit goes.
Jay's the best.
Yeah, give him a first star. And I just love being on the show and was being able to fly.
I know you brought out your best leather.
What's
going on? Pinky Tuscadero.
This is what I wear to the bar. I was told wear what you wear to the bar, which usually involves more sequins. But I thought I'll tone it down on day
only one of us should wear sequins. I already called that.
So we got lots of games coming up here this week, but the get-right games. So we know that the Rams are taking on the Falcons, big favorites at home, but we're looking at if you can trust Allen Robinson and Cam Akers in your lineup for week 2, or is it Darrell Henderson?
So let's start with the wide receivers. Trust is a strong word, Julie. Trust is a strong word. I don't know that I want to say I trust Allen Robinson. I mean, he played all but 2 offensive snaps in week 1, and you watch the tape, and he was open. But, there was and I apologize because I don't remember who put it together, but I retweeted somebody that put together, like, every snap, like, here's Allen Robinson's route tree, and it was, like, 2 steps, and then you watch the ball go somewhere else. So I don't know. I haven't run receiver 29. So I have him a low-end wide receiver 3, despite the great matchup here, because there is uncertainty. So I don't think he's an automatic start. I think if you have at least 2 wide receivers that are 28 or above on my list, I think you're starting them above that. So I think I'm cautiously optimistic. I still believe in his talent. I still believe in that scheme. It is still week 1. Falcons are a much better matchup. I think they sort of got, a wake-up call. They've had 10 days to prepare for this game as opposed to a regular week. But yeah, 2 targets is 2 targets. So I'm a little bit nervous. I do feel like I heard from a source, a good source, that Cam Akers was a little bit in the doghouse in week 1, sort of learned his lesson, and I think I expect more of a split this week. Sean McVay said 2 days ago, quote, he's going to get an opportunity to do it this week. I know what Cam's capable of. 13-3. He was out-carried by Darrell Henderson. I think both guys are viable flex plays this week. I certainly have Henderson ahead of Cam Akers. Hearing the quote and we'll see how the practice reports go. Yeah. I have a wide range between Henderson and Akers right now based on week 1. I think it gets closer. If I have to pick one, I'm going with Henderson just based on last week's usage. So I do think that Akers is a shaky flex, and I understand if you wouldn't want to start him again this week because last week should have been eye-opening to you. But I do think it's a better week for Cam Akers. So you may not have better options because you probably drafted him fairly high, Jay.
Yeah, I feel a lot better about Allen Robinson than Cam Akers at this point. I think the thing with Robinson is that he did play almost every snap offensively. And so 4% target rate, that's not going to happen again. I believe we have a little video, though, for the Allen Robinson experience.
This is a great tweet right here. This is from Justin_14P. And the quote tweet was, me starting Allen Robinson in my fantasy lineup again this week.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
I love this video.
Right. This is the greatest video. So it's like, okay, you know what? I'm going to save it. It is what it is. Fell in the ditch in week 1. But you know what? Here, Allen Robinson, go. I'm setting you free. Run free. Score me some fantasy points. You can do. Oh, you can't.
And it wasn't even like he tripped in.
No.
He jumped right back in that hole there because that's what's going to happen. But I got a source who's telling me that they believe that Allen Robinson will see a lot more volume and that also Sean McVay rarely calls out players. And he did call out Cam Akers. Before he had that nice motivational quote that you mentioned, he was saying, we got to see some more from this guy.
Yes. So, again, he was in the doghouse. Then, again, if I'm picking a Rams running back, give me Henderson over Akers. But I do think I'm not ready to just completely throw in the towel on Akers. I do think he's a risky but upside flex against the Falcons, a game we expect them to be leading.
Okay, let's go on to the Niners taking on the Seahawks. We mentioned this before, but if you drafted Trey Lance, I don't know who that could possibly be, to be your starter, would you roll the dice again, Matthew?
Look, it's certainly a tough matchup. I'm at QB 14, so I am as a QB 2. I will say I don't think you can truly judge him on horrible weather. No George Kittle. He loses his starting running back early in the game, and playing a tough defense. Like the Bears' offense is a disaster, but the Bears' defense is fine. It's a solid middle of the pack defense. So I don't think you can hold Week 1 against him. I do think what was encouraging is there was a lot of designed runs for Trey Lance. And so that keeps his floor high. Like, again, Trey Lance did not play well from an NFL perspective. They lost that game, and yet still he wasn't as much a disaster as Dak Prescott was.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, like, we're trying to find positives here.
You don't have to outrun the bear. You just got to outrun the slowest guy.
There you go. That's exactly right. So again, trust is a strong word, but I'm probably leaning more towards rolling with him than not. Again, I'm at QB 14. It depends on what else you have.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
last week, Trey Lance was the third most unlucky quarterback in the league in terms of drops, interception luck. So we expect that to come back. He was also the number 1 most unlucky quarterback in terms of the weather that he dealt with, wasn't put in a position to succeed. His offensive line was a disaster as well. So, yeah, I'm not giving up on Trey Lance yet. And the Niners are 10-point favorites. So the betting market certainly thinks that they will get right.
Yeah, and hopefully he gets George Kittle back this week, too, which is important not only as a pass catcher, but also he's a really good blocker as well. And so that'll open up some running lanes for Trey Lance.
All right, let's move on to Bengals taking on the Cowboys. I know Joe Burrow didn't have such a great first game with 5 turnovers, but we expect him to bounce back.
Yeah, we do. I mean, look, I'm a QB 11, right? I mean, but listen, Dallas has a decent defense. I mean, they didn't lose Dak Prescott from the defense. Having said that, we don't expect their offense to be that effective, so you're going to be seeing shorter, the Dallas defense is going to be on the field a lot more because they're going to have shorter offensive possessions for the Cowboys. We expect this to be, yes, to your point, a get-right game for Joe Burrow. Cowboys did give up the 11th most passing yards. You know, Tom Brady didn't have a huge game in the box score, but they were moving the ball consistently, more field goals than scores. But again, I'm at QB 11. I'm at QB 11, right? Because again, he still doesn't run. There's not as much rushing upside. We still think the Cowboys' defense is pretty good. The turnovers are a concern. The offensive line, even though it was rebuilt in the offseason, they looked awful against the Steelers.
Brutal.
Yeah, so I mean, I think he's a borderline QB1 this week.
Yeah, and Joe Burrow, he does throw interceptions. He had 14 last year. He had 3 in that one game against the Bears, I think on consecutive plays, basically. And so, I mean, he had 4 against the Steelers. It probably should have been 3. He got a little bit unlucky, but I suspect Joe Burrow will be fine. He just needs to stop taking as many sacks because as bad as the offensive line
7 sacks.
Yeah. The offensive line isn't great, but he takes some of those sacks himself as well.
He does. He absolutely does.
Okay, so just another question for this game. T. Higgins with a concussion, likely out. Is Tyler Boyd startable?
I don't think so because I think like you see some Hayden Hurst. I think you'll see some Joe Mixon. I think they'll mix and match outside of Jamar Chase. Again, it depends on sort of the size of your league, but I wouldn't automatically assume that he gets all of T. Higgins' targets. Let's discuss. Let's figure out see how he goes. I mean, my old friend Stephania Bell will always say concussions are nonlinear injuries, and so you have good days and bad days, and so you never want to speculate on that. We want T to get right himself, before he comes out there. A lot of football still to play for T. Higgins, so won't want to speculate on that. I will say that we will have the latest on T. Higgins on Fantasy Football Pregame this Sunday, 11 a.m. to 1, right here on Peacock. I'm a company man.
Look at that.
Our guy,
nice
Mike Ryan. Yeah, Mike Ryan, who does a great job with the injuries, former head trainer of the Jaguars for 20 years. He'll be here, and I'm sure he'll have the latest on T. Higgins.
Yeah, one thing about this game to note is that the Bengals are now 8.5-point favorites against the Cowboys. So I was with Julie earlier that I would have made that game pick if Dak Prescott was playing.
Right.
So Dak Prescott, Cooper Rush, 8.5-point swing. So Joe Burrow shouldn't face too much resistance, I would have thought.
He shouldn't, but also, by the way, maybe there's a game to get, again, if they're up big, are they running more? Does Burrow even play the entire game? Right? So I don't think they blow them out. You know what I mean? My point is I think if they get a comfortable lead, they're like, okay.
Pretty low total. 43 is the total, so it might be a bit ugly.
Are you doing over-under quickly?
I would probably lean under just because Cooper Rush. I don't.
Yeah, we don't know. We don't really know much about him yet with this. Okay, we got Raiders taking on the Cardinals. Derek Carr, Hunter Renfrow, safe to start after watching the Chiefs annihilate the Cards through the air, or Adams and Waller still?
So the question is, on Derek Carr, I mean him as a top 10 quarterback. Again, Patrick Mahomes threw 5 touchdowns against these Cardinals, right? They gave up 5 passing touchdowns in week 1. Patrick Mahomes had his way with them. I'm not saying Derek Carr's Patrick Mahomes, but Derek Carr's a good quarterback, and he's got a lot of weapons, obviously. Devontae Adams, a fantastic start last week. Wide receiver 3 with over 30 fantasy points, 44% target share for Adams last week. Hunter Renfrow, I have at 37 this week. Look, the positives here, they saw 6 targets in week 1, right? But he averaged 7.5 last year. He ran fewer routes than Matt Collins did against the Chargers. And so I think we're still figuring out what Josh McDaniels wants to do with this offense beyond the obvious guys, beyond the Wallers and the Devontae Adams. So, again, I'm as a wide receiver 4. I think this is going to be a high-scoring game, and certainly nothing about Arizona's defense scares you. But Renfrow had his biggest games last year when Waller was out, when he was really the only part of the passing game here. Devontae Adams had a 44% target share.
Yeah, is that going to happen again?
I don't know. I don't know about 44%, but I think it's a lot. They're paying him a lot of money. It's his best friend from college, and we've talked about this. Josh McDaniels hasn't had a toy like this since Randy Moss in 07 or whatever it was. So I think you
just don't want to break that toy.
No, you do not want to break that toy.
It.
I will say that I'm in a guillotine league. I don't know if anyone knows what a guillotine league is.
Oh, wow.
So a guillotine league is
very Alice Cooper.
Yeah. Thank you. But a guillotine league, it's a lot of fun to play, by the way. But a guillotine league is basically, the idea is that everyone drafts a lineup, and then at the end of the week, the team that has the lowest score is cut from the league. You're just out of the league. And all their players are put back in the free agent pool, and you just keep doing that until there's one team remaining.
I love it.
It is an insanely fun. It's really when you're down there with the last, it's like a sweat like no other. To your point about you don't have to be the fastest, you just have to be faster than the bear, right? So that's
my motto.
So I had the 4th pick, and I took Adams because again, in a guillotine league, you just want to go safe. You're not worried about upside. You're literally like, I just don't need to be last. And so I think his upside.
Well,
I don't know about his upside, but I think his floor
going.
is insanely high.
Wow. Okay.
Agreed. And the thing to watch in that game, 51.5 is the total. It's going to be a lot of yards, a lot of points, both football points and fantasy points up for grabs. I'm just a little bit worried about Derek Carr. He had 5 turnover-worthy plays against the Chargers. New coach, I think he'll be fine and he will accumulate, but it's just something to keep an eye on if he's bad again against a much worse defense.
Fair.
Okay, well, we have the Packers and the Bears, of course, the Sunday night game here on NBC.
You're a company
And yes, my first day on the job, I've already promoted the Premier League and, of course, Sunday Night Football.
Go Arsenal.
Are we trusting Aaron Rodgers in lineups again this week? And if you have Aaron Rodgers, you probably are. Yes,
he owns the Bears.
Yes.
He legit owns the Bears. He should show up with like an ownership certificate. He should get somebody to like mock up like a shares of the team or something like that. He should show up because he owns the Bears. Like my love-hate list will come out tomorrow. Right, today's Wednesday. It'll come out tomorrow, and Aaron Rodgers is going to be on it. I'm just going to give a heads up and hint here. Do I think Aaron Rodgers has 2 bad games in a row? I do not. Do I think Aaron Rodgers has a bad game at Lambeau against the Bears? I do not. Do I think Aaron Rodgers have a bad game at home against the Bears in Lambeau in prime time? Absolutely not.
No way, Jose.
Aaron Rodgers is going nuclear. Aaron Rodgers is going nuclear against the Bears.
Agreed on that. And how much different is the discourse around Rodgers if Christian Watson just catches that 75-yard walk-in touchdown?
Right.
Of the pass catchers, I do think Romeo Doubs is the guy that you want if Alan Lazard isn't playing. He got the most targets, best PFF grade of all the receivers. I do think he is the guy who has the most upside.
4 games against the Bears over the last 2 years, 26.3 fantasy points. That's what he averages against the Bears. Again,
and he
owns them.
He owns them. We always know the first game, at least last year, is kind of a throwaway game. But I did listen to you guys and drafted A.J. Dillon, and thank you very much for that.
The quad father is fantastic. His backfield mate, by the way, last year, week 1, running back 51 in that brutal loss to the Saints. The following week against the Lions, running back 2, 41.5 fantasy points. He was only one of 2 running backs to have a 40-point game last year. Aaron Jones is going to get right.
Yes.
We love A.J.
Aaron
Dillon.
Jones.
Again, 1A and 1A. Free Aaron Jones. # free Aaron Jones. He will be freed. He's going to.
That was an anomaly.
I'm in on the Packers.
Okay.
What's the line for the Packers?
-10.
Give me the pack. Well, that's a big line.
I think it is a big line.
You would thought maybe minus 9, but you don't take them.
Did I say at 13? Was that the one I said?
Yeah,
I'm going to take them an alternate.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fine. Okay. Well, we know that game is on Sunday night on NBC, and the NFL season is here, and the NBC Sports Predictor app is giving you a shot at winning $100,000 by entering Sunday night's Sevens free contest between the Bears and the Packers. So if you don't have the NBC Sports Predictor app, go download it now.
Free. And you can use the code ROTO2022 to join the league with me and Jay and JS.
Yes, I will join that. The last call next. Stay with us. Welcome back. Well, we know that the Commanders are 1-0, and you're very happy about that.
First place Commanders.
But they are underdogs to the Detroit Lions, minus 2.5. What are you buying that?
2.5. Like, so let me get this straight. There are not a lot of franchises that are worse than the Washington Commanders over the last 20 years, but one of them is the Detroit Lions. They are 0-1. My Commanders are 1-0, and you're telling me that the Lions are getting 2.5? The 0-1 Lions are getting 2.5 to my 1-0 Commanders? Give me the Commanders.
Yes,
when you
I imagined you would say that.
Again, it's a dumb rule. You're usually supposed to wait 3 weeks, but whatever. I'm doing it. When a losing team is getting points.
I hate this, but I agree with you. Hail the plus 2.5. Commanders cover.
All right. Well, I picked the Lions, but I want to be back. We'll see you tomorrow, guys.
All right. Peace out. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and RotoWorld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from RotoWorld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.